I call this meeting of the Urban Design Committee to order. The time is now 6 p.m. on Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Section 30A, Section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatoni's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission will be conducted via remote participation. Members of the Urban Design Commission present are standing in for co-chair Sarah Lewis, Melissa Woods, senior planner.
Here.
I am Luisa Oliveira, Director of Public Space and Urban Forestry, also a co-chair with Sarah. Frank Valdez, Deborah Fennick, and Andrew Arbach. And no planning staff are joining us, other planning staff are joining us tonight.
No other planning staff will be present this evening.
I will be chairing the committee and will be working from the agenda that was sent earlier in the week. Do you need to let anyone else in, Melissa, or we're good?
We have a few participants here, and when the time is right, we can enable them to present. But I think we need to do minutes first.
Yes.
And you would do a roll call attendance?
So for general business, we have the approval of minutes from May 26th, 2020, June 16th, 2020, July 22nd, 2020, and August 27th, 2020. Does anyone have any corrections or modifications to those minutes?
I do not.
Okay. If that is the case, then we'll do a roll call vote to approve them. Does someone have to motion to approve those minutes?
I motion to approve them.
And then the second?
Second.
Andrew will second. So Frank motioned and Andrew seconded, and now I have to do a roll call vote. So the motion to approve the minutes of those 4 meetings that I listed, Frank Valdez?
Yes, approve.
Andrew Arbach?
Yes.
Deborah Fennick?
Yes.
I am also voting yes, and I cannot vote, Melissa's saying. So it seems that the minutes are approved. Okay, the only other item on the agenda is the design review for the project for 379 Somerville Ave, which is a 5-story building in an MR5 district. And it seems Melissa will be letting folks speak about this. We'll hear a brief presentation, we'll have some questions, and then a discussion. And the final outcome is that we're, what is the final? What are we voting on?
So this evening in front of you, you'll have 379 Somerville Ave. Will, I just promoted you to presenter, so I see your screen popping up now. So there's really 4 actions that you would take this evening. One is a recommendation of one of the 3 options that will be presented. Another vote for identification of any priority design guidelines. A vote on whether the design guidelines have been met to your satisfaction. And lastly, anything else that you would like to weigh in on or additional comments. Sometimes that doesn't necessarily result in a vote. Those are the 4 things actions to move this on to its next stage. Or there's also the option to continue this proposal until the next meeting if you deem necessary. Like I said, this is for 379 Somerville Avenue, and the design guidelines of the district for the Mid-Rise 5 district are all listed on page They start on page 186 of the zoning code, and after a presentation, I could share my screen with the group if we wanted to go through those, or if you would like to bring them up in the meantime. Will, if that's okay, Louisa, if that's okay, if Will could present.
Yes, please. If
Is
there
now
are
the
no other,
right time?
if there are no other questions, Will, the floor is yours.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes,
can.
can we see Will while he's presenting?
I can hang on. I didn't dress accordingly, but yes.
Neither did we.
Hang on, I'm trying here. Hold on one second.
It might be technology on the go-to meeting end, Will, so.
I can see myself. I don't know. Can you see me?
Yes, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Yes. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I'll give just a brief run through on the project, just so everyone knows the program, and we'll go from there. Let me just go to view real quick. So, as I'm sure you know, this is currently the Thunder Road bar and performance stage, I guess, as we call it, and that has been approved to be demolished. We went through the historic commission and received approval on that. So we started this project assuming we were going to salvage it, and we still do plan on probably at least attempting to salvage the party wall with the adjacent neighbor just from a structural standpoint. But anyway, so it's a very narrow lot. It's actually only 40 feet wide, and at its long side, 90 feet long, 85 feet on the right. So it's somewhat constraining in the sense that an MR5 is obviously a tall building for a narrow lot. We also have these parameters, as I'm sure you're all aware of, the 14-foot ground floor height, glazing requirements and all of that. So, you know, it's sort of by nature going to read as a very tall building. And I realized that we, at the 11th hour, I think, Frank, you caught it. Thank you very much for that. On the 5th floor, not having a step back. So I would ask that some of the design options sort of be taken with a grain of salt because they were done sort of at the 11th hour, but that's why we're here, right? So program-wise, the intention is for it to be commercial, retail, or some other entity on the ground floor and the basement level, with a residential lobby on the left-hand side. And we are salvaging and sort of creating a new green space in the rear. I'll quickly, these are just area plans. Again, there's residential units above, 10 units. 10 as of right now with this top floor cutback. That may change just because of a square footage standpoint on this top floor unit, but we'll get to that at another time. Obviously, all units are required to have outdoor space. We're also providing a green roof, which is not for the public, but as part of sustainability program Somerville has in place, and the requirement to meet the green score. So we are proposing a green roof on the top level. We have an access hatch, but other than that, it's not habitable for the residents. So from a design standpoint, I'll go. I think this elevation probably helps. So there's a lot going on, obviously, on Somerville Ave, and this, in a manner of speaking, is sort of a gateway to Union Square on this portion of Somerville Ave. Just from the area being ripe for development, I know there are other projects in the area that have been approved, and there's going to be many that are going to get approved or proposed in the near future. So, you know, we feel it's a prominent building, so we wanted to do a high quality project here. I know the developers are very keen on doing that as well. But there's obviously an eclectic mix. We've got some of the more recent approved projects that are somewhat contemporary in nature, and then obviously the older established buildings. So we're trying to sort of meld the two here with materiality and scale. So, you know, a lot of glass, a lot of masonry, And we feel that that fits into what's going on in this street, but we're kind of treating it in a more contemporary manner. Again, here's just some of our calculations regarding zoning with our glazing requirements on both the upper floors and the ground level. I'll just quickly move on to the proposed. So what we're proposing here is a mix of, as I mentioned, masonry with some detailing reveals here, sort of a nod to the former building with a cornice here, as well as here, just to give it some sort of contextual aesthetic to it, but also, you know, it cleans up the top of the building and these sort of fin walls that we have on the side nicely. The bay, we're proposing using like a Sembrite panel, cementitious with large glass. We have little railings for the Juliet balconies on the front of the building. And right now we're showing storefront. I know that, you know, potentially a restaurant could go in here. So I don't know, I don't want to hamstring ourselves here. We were thinking of potentially putting in bifold doors here to allow for some sort of indoor-outdoor seating in the future. So residential entry over here, exit here, and then of course our commercial space doors right in the center. We have a sign band, which scale-wise is sort of a nod to the former Thunder Road. Again, we were previously planning on salvaging parts of it, so that's where that came from. Showing cast stone at the base. And this is our preferred option, but I'm happy to go through the other two as well. So this version, we're showing a different color brick in addition to this traditional red. We've got a gray brick. We've also treated this bay differently with panel and changed the windows and the scale of the windows slightly. And obviously the major difference here is this top floor is now being treated in a vertical metal siding, and we're putting a much more decorative cornice on this top, keeping the main level, the fourth floor cornice more subtle in nature and expressing the fact that that is a terrace on top for that unit. So showing the railing here, whereas before we had more of a pony wall shielding that area. We've got a sunscreen to get some sort of shade up there, but also just break up the facade, and obviously added large doors into the unit there. The lower level rather has been treated now with brick opposed to the previous Aristocrat thin stone, like a limestone. And that really sort of is this option. And it's quickly, the final is again showing a two-tone brick. We've got a gray and a red. Now we're introducing copper. In this instance, we're showing it patinaed. Obviously, we could leave it raw or let it patina and then seal it, or we could expedite the process with muriatic acid and get that going. And again, we've done that before. And then we've changed the railings on this. This is a more contemporary option, sort of with the glass railings, both here and in the lower level terrace. We kept the brick down low, and we've sort of removed some of the banding of panel infill here on this masonry wall, and just let this read as brick. And I think I'll leave it. I think that's enough. I think I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me talk, so be happy to hear your feedback now and maybe which ones you. My computer seems to be flashing. I apologize for that. My control button is stuck. Okay. So I will, I guess, toss it up to the board, if that's all right.
Does anyone have any questions?
I guess
Yeah.
I do.
Deborah does.
And I think Andrew does too. Okay, so I'll go first, which is, it seems that all three schemes have the same compositional strategy, and that what you've done is different ways of applying the materials.
Yeah.
So can you, so I got it right? So
I think
so
that's, I think that's safe to say, fair to say rather. Honestly, from a footprint standpoint, I mean, I could, on the front, there's not a whole lot of room to work with. So I think, I could have maybe swapped bays, we need balconies, so unfortunately I have to have those. I don't necessarily, if we had a, excuse me, let me rephrase that. If I had a habitable green roof, we wouldn't need those. But for those units, I do need outdoor space. I think, honestly, I'd probably not like to have those Juliet balconies in the front. I don't think they serve a lot of purpose. They're difficult to make accessible, but I understand why.
So that's an issue. So, I mean, you're calling them Juliet balconies, but they're not really Juliet
Well,
balconies.
they're not
right?
Juliets. Yeah,
They're balconies.
they're balconies which meet the minimum size standpoint, but I can say from an accessibility standpoint and waterproofing standpoint, it will be challenging. If not, I think I'm going to have to change. In fact, I'm probably going to have to change the door size to make it so it's a large double door in swing.
I
So
mean,
you
I don't
look-
think that.
Clarify that requirement as well. All the units are required to have outdoor space per this segment of the zoning.
Yes.
And would a common outdoor space qualify, or each individual unit has to have its own?
No, common would satisfy. The trouble in this instance with doing that is I would need to bring the elevator obviously up to that roof level, as well as those two stairwells, and that would make this building feel even taller. And honestly, I'm not sure if Melissa, would it actually then be a 6-story build? I mean, I guess it would be. We'd have to make the 5th floor at the habitable roof level and lose those units.
Not necessarily. There's exceptions for elevator overruns and things like that. So I think as long as it fits within those exceptions, you would be fine.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an overrun in this instance, just because I'd have to bring the elevator up there for residents to access it. But I feel like then it would be, well, either way, I feel like the building would almost be giving the city a finger at that point, because it's so narrow and there's this tall tower sticking right up there. So I guess the point being, outdoor space for the units is the direction we chose. And the constraints sort of at the front of the building, maybe we need to look at enlarging those onto the
Well, I
inside.
think that the problem that I see with that, and I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that, is that I'm looking at the dimensional requirements for the balconies, and it doesn't seem like perhaps the dimensional requirements are completely met in some of those balconies. I'm looking at the requirements of like a minimum of 5 feet, 5 foot depth, right? And an area of 50 square feet. But then I'm looking at the balconies that you're providing in the front part on the 3rd level, and maybe even in the 2nd level. You called it out. They're not accessible. I mean, those 2 balconies are not in any way accessible for a wheelchair to turn around. So,
well, they are accessible in the sense that the doors swing in, and that creates a turning radius that you can get in and out if it's flush.
So I guess that was my question. So as long as you're in that balcony, as long as you're providing that, the 2 doors open, then that balcony does comply. But how about on the 2nd floor? Does that also happen as well?
It's going to have to. So I mean, I'm going to have a raised floor there with drainage underneath. So I mean, I understand that. I mean, again, perfect world, I wouldn't have those on the front. I don't think they add much to the unit. I think in that instance, but at the same time, it's a requirement, and I think we have to make it work. So.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. I think that you need to make it work, just because, I mean, yes, I see the conflict of having to provide the balcony, but then I'm saying just because we have to provide something doesn't mean that we need to do it badly, right? So I think that we need to put a full effort to make it work so that it is waterproof, as you said, and accessible as well from a ADA.
Right, and my intention is to do it well, not to do it badly. So we've utilized, the raised, I guess from ease of understanding, like the cedar squares that are raised up, that's on a pedestal system, so that we can pick up, 2 or 3 inches and keep them flush with the inside of the unit, but still maintain waterproofing and internal drains and things like that. So, it's challenging just because the units are very small to begin with. And, you start picking away at things, and there's not a lot left. So, I mean, unit layouts are going to be revised. Obviously, they're mostly shown just for reference, but you know,
That's things that definitely jumped out at me is that these units are very small. Very small, and I think that's where the balcony getting sort of eaten out really does make a huge difference. Is there any ability, like, I'm just looking at the units in the back, and it just feels like we're trying to stuff more into this building than it probably size-wise can accommodate. Is there any ability to have
well,
fewer units?
to be fair, there are 90 units smaller than this going up across the street. So I there is a market for them. People are doing more compact living. That was obviously pre-COVID, so always put that caveat out there. But you know, if you're asking if I can shrink the number of units, that's something I'd have to speak with the developer on. I mean, I would say specifically on the top floor, that could be a really nice penthouse unit, opposed to 2 small units, but they do have nice outdoor space. So, you know, people find a way. If people want to live in the city, they'll live in the city. I mean,
Right. On that same question, Will,
Yeah.
on the size, I had asked the question. I guess I believe the assumption on your project is that you're taking the 850 square feet per dwelling unit average, not the 1,500, right?
I need to reference my chart real quick. I know we're taking the net zero approach, which allows for the greater density.
Right. So I guess that's what I was going to ask. I think that since you are choosing to do the net zero passive house, can you tell us a little bit more about what is it that you're doing to achieve that in this project? What are the elements or components that this project will have that will make it passive house net zero in order for that allowable density?
Is that the purview of this board? Just out of curiosity.
I think it's an interesting question, but it might be not part of the design guidelines that you guys are reviewing. And I know the unit density also. So this project, as it moves forward, will be looking for site plan approval for a general building and also a special permit for residential uses. So the residential component and sizing of those units and appropriateness will be reviewed at that time. Do you guys want to take a few minutes to review the design guidelines for MR5 districts and then focus on that?
Sure.
So we'll have a few minutes to review those. There's A through T in the MR5 district. Would you like me to show my screen at all, or does everybody have that up?
No, that would be helpful. I don't have it up.
Okay, one moment. If you guys are blind like me, I will just click in a few seconds to get you to the next page instead of trying to view 2 pages at once.
So can I ask a question? Can I ask a question on one of the items and see how those components are typically going to get addressed? When you refer to the vents, exhaust, and other utility features in the building facades, they should be architecturally integrated into the design of the building. It should be located in the minimized areas, blah, 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 right? So when reviewing a facade, are we asking as well, then we should be able to see all of those components that should be located on the facade so we can review it accordingly versus not being located on the facade? So I guess the question is, we're looking at the facade and we have to review vents and exhaust and other things. Shouldn't those be documented if there are any? So I guess my question then to you, Will, would be, is there any of those components going to be on this facade?
So we wouldn't vent anything to the front facade.
So there would be no grills, no venting, no intake, none of that stuff.
The only thing I could possibly think about would be if there was some sort of venting related to the passive house features of the windows, if we did something like that. But that would be the only grill, I would say, if we were to utilize, but no.
Which again, Melissa, just for argument's sake, that's to see how that's why it connects it back to the whole net zero and passive house.
Yeah,
And also the idea of density. Density does impact mass and impacts the volume. So again, I'm not gonna discuss it any further, but those things then in essence do have an impact.
And Frank, I wasn't trying to be difficult about it. I simply want to understand the parameters of it because
Oh no, yeah, no, I get it. Well, me too. I'm trying to understand the parameters as well as to what can we talk about and not talk about, you know. So I'm just trying to tie it together.
No,
and if it's something that connects to the design, right, I'm saying, okay, then we should see it. And if your intent is to do net zero, perfect. Then if there should be an investigation then to show then, yes, we are going to be doing this and this is going to be required. That's all I'm saying.
No, your point's well taken. And I think, you know, I can certainly in a broad terms talk about it. I think what's difficult on my end is, and you and everyone on this board knows this, you know, when you're going through this process, you don't always have those details in front of you, such as, I mean, you know where they're going to be vents, what things are going to require vents, but that aside, but like things like that, you know, obviously we'd like to put solar panels possibly up there, but I don't know what that array is going to look like and what, I mean, I do, but do we put that in a UDC meeting present? You know what I mean? Like we're putting the cart before the horse. So I think it's all related, but it's a difficult question.
No, it is. And that's why I just put it to Melissa as a question in the future is, you know, does it impact what we're looking at and what we're reviewing and then what the end product is? So just a question. I mean, we're all early in the process of all of this, you know, so, you know, we're all learning about it. So.
Back to the facade issue. Well, we've been on it, but back to it's more in more general terms. Can you describe the sides and the back? Because we will see, you know, from the street, from the public realm, you will see the sides of this until, you know, the properties around it develop.
Right. So the side, so I guess if we're approaching Union Square on Somerville Ave, that side we've done entirely out of masonry. I don't know if I should share my screen again, if that would be helpful, or if you want to look at, oh, here we go. Nice. Thank you, Melissa.
that should work.
Okay. And I do apologize because I did have a final rendering for this, which showed this side better, but that kind of got scrapped at the last moment. But what we've, and this isn't, this is a fun program issue here, but these will be brick as well, these recesses. So what we're doing is we're carrying that ornate cornice, at least on this option, on the sides here. And because of the requirements with the setbacks in the MR5, we actually kind of have an interesting little step here, which create terrace opportunities, but also obviously help our abutters in the rear. But you know, it is a blank wall, for lack of a better term. But we thought if we did nice masonry detailing here, we've got some soldier courses. Again, the cornice here, these reveals, and I think the hope is obviously at some point that adjacent property gets redeveloped, But in the interim, at least is a handsome masonry wall. On the other side, we are, I apologize for this blue square. On the other side, we are mostly going to be using CMU cinder block on the lower levels because they are adjacent to that building. And then the upper level, because I'm not sure, but that building next door is a rather handsome building. I don't see it going anywhere in the future. We treated the top floor as the other side with the brick, and again, some of the detailing on the side. You know, there's I think on the existing abutting building, I don't know if I have it in one of these. I don't think I do because I don't have the rendering on here. But there was, I think on the adjacent building, there's like an old Coca-Cola advertisement, or I think it's Coca-Cola, but or some other. Well, actually, I'm looking at it. It looks like it's tagged something, but at one point it was like a Coca-Cola. So there is maybe an opportunity to, you know, do an art installation. I know recently when we looked at that Union Square project, we had that blank wall adjacent to the Independent, and that was a great opportunity because I don't think anyone wants to see the Independent go for some sort of art. You know, Union Square is a pretty eclectic place, and I do apologize. On the right-hand side, it'll be the top 2 floors will be masonry because that's only a 2-story building. But you know, I think it could be, again, depending on what's going to be developed next door, it could be an opportunity for some artwork.
So I had a question. So the current, it looks like the current Thunder Road does have an exit onto that driveway. Is there any easement, or is that's just sort of?
So that's a shared easement, yeah, with the abutters. So we're maintaining that easement. We're not changing.
And how much space do they have in that easement?
On our property?
Yes, or like how close will if the neighboring property to the left is redeveloped, how close can it get? It can't come right up to it. Is that correct?
So I actually apologize. We are taking over that part of the easement is here. I'm not sure if the attorney is on. They may know that better, the status of that. But this shaded line here, this hatch rather, if you can follow my cursor, is the existing Thunder Road building. So we're infilling that stretch. So I'm not positive, but I believe that we have to maintain this.
Gotcha. Okay.
Here. I'm sorry, I don't have the deed information in front of me.
But you're going from side lot line to side lot line, Will?
Yes, I'm
filling on the abutter's property.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I know I'm filling a lot.
Can I ask some questions about the green space as well?
Yep.
Is there any means to access it, I guess, other than through the building? I'm looking at commercial trash areas, but how would you ever get the trash out without bringing it back through the building?
So that is the commercial, you're right, the commercial trash is in the rear, at least for now. So that space is mostly going to be allocated, I believe, to that commercial space. So if there were a restaurant or something there, maybe that would become patio. We could I'd have to speak with the owner. Maybe as part of that easement access, there's a gate there so that they can bring it out directly out the side opposed to going through the middle of the building. That's, you know,
That's something I'd like to get some more information on in terms of the green space, just as it's rendered. I'm assuming this is kind of northeast facing on the building, so it's fairly shaded. Right now, your green square's accounting for it as sort of lawn. The plan is calling out as small trees, but they're 3 feet, and then the green score is saying that they're only 2 feet tall. So I think understanding how that space is and what the true nature of that space would be something that I'd be looking for a little bit more information on.
Yeah, you know, I apologize because there is a landscape plan, and if you give me a moment, I can pull it up. I'm not sure why I didn't include it in this presentation, but I can bring that up and email it. I know it's short notice to review it, but Sorry, I'm doing it right now. That would give a little more.
Because my next set of questions was really about the streetscape as well, which isn't really covered in this plan either. And understanding sort of how that public realm element is working, I think would be really important.
Right. So as part of this, we have to keep a 12-foot width along the front of the building from the edge of curb to the front of our building to allow for potentially cafe tables or something like that and maintain access. We're not allowed to create an overhang there, unfortunately, but we're kind of doing it a small overhang, but not a dramatic one. There's an existing street tree. You know, I think we have an opportunity to put some boxed planters or something. I'm going to pull up the landscape plan. Hold on a moment.
2 street trees basically. Or
Can you see that? You know, this isn't necessarily, you know, I'll email, this isn't presenting well. I'll email.
Yeah. Just looking at it really quickly, I would say the plan that we're seeing, it looks like a residential backyard plan, which if it's going to be for the commercial space, it might just sort of want to look at it through that lens, and if that makes sense for a commercial exterior space.
Yeah, you know, we've got some really mature trees on the abutting properties behind us that almost cover this entire property in shade. I think it's honestly going to operate more like maybe a beer garden patio than anything.
I think that would be awesome and really cool, but that has a very different design component than what we're seeing, and that's basically all pavers. So that's going to affect the green score, that affects the design, and I think we would want to know that and see it, especially as it is adjacent to a residential area. I'm not saying no to it. I think it actually makes more sense, but that's just it's a different design.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to speak as to who is going to take over the space. I think it's so yes, while I agree beer garden would be, maybe that's the wrong choice for words. It could be an insurance agency for all I know, and that's where they eat lunch. But
if it's going to be a paver space versus a lawn space, that level should be, I think, figured out.
Okay, that's fair. You know, I think if the concern is that the residential units themselves aren't being able to take advantage of that, I think obviously we saw the shortcomings of the smaller balconies on the front, but I will say that the larger unit, the units on the back have much larger outdoor space with real opportunity to get some nice plantings and let's see. You know, these terraces are quite large. That's almost 400 square foot terrace there. This is, you know, 100 square foot. But and then again, the front is quite large. But your point's well taken. We'll explore how we really want to utilize that rear yard more, and maybe.
I can say on the terraces, and definitely Frank and Deborah might jump in and totally disagree with me. I think the terraces to me seem very large compared to the scale of the units in general. Like that balance, I think, to me is part of what's calling out why I feel like the units seem so underscaled. That just sort of jumps out at me as being a little bit odd. And I think if I had my preference, which it seems like it's not possible, or maybe it is, I probably would have preferred a larger common space, that a nicer, larger common space that could be utilized by the everyone together.
Andrew, I think that the terraces are a product of the setbacks that they have to abide by.
Yeah.
So they just, by default, they become terraces because of the 10-foot and 20-foot setbacks on the back side of it. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done about it.
Well, we could certainly shrink the usable space on them if you want, and maybe put like living roof on the outer edge just to ensure there's perpetual green space out there. You know, people worry about the clutter that it collects on patios, but you know, it is, to Frank's point, a direct result of the setbacks. We thought to take advantage of it.
Okay.
Is there any more feedback on the design guidelines?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to the front facade and the side facades. And just, you know, again, I'd like to understand what the conceptual differences between these. I know the form is pretty similar. I think the composition feels pretty comfortable to me, but the way you apply materials, you know, is there a logic? I mean, is there, you know, you know, the brick, I mean, we're going to see brick returning on both, on one side, everything we can see, right, on the what is that, the west side. And, you know, so I'm just trying to understand the logic of these scenarios. Or if it's just, or whether there not isn't a logic for them.
I think, well, I think, you know, the building is a certain size. Well, time constraint, I will be perfectly honest, had something to do with what you're seeing as far as the two other options, and changing the materials and slightly changing it. I think I was happy with the original design. I actually think the step back helps the scale of the building along the street on the 5th floor. So even though that was a zoning requirement, I think it did help the composition. You know, I tried to treat the residential entry sort of as, even though it's set back, it's sort of entry major with the bay above. It sort of defines that, and then the commercial part rather sort of is secondary to the right, even though it's prominent. You know, I think it was just a mix of, I like brick. I think brick buildings stand the test of time better. I'm tired of using hardy products. So I think it's a nice opportunity to sort of fit in with what's already there. And then I've seen what's been approved on other parts of Union Square, and I feel like it's an aesthetic that the residents are comfortable with and that the city is in favor of. And so, you know, I'd love to hear feedback if you feel like it's too busy, if there's too many materials going on. I mean, you know, I'm happy to hear constructive criticism. That's why we're here. So I guess if you're looking for some sort of narrative, I'm not sure I have what you're looking for.
Okay. Can you remind me what the darker material is again? In the first is the one that you prefer, that you?
Yeah, so it's a product called Sembrit, which is a cementitious panel, but it's a higher quality. It's got a lot more color options and sort of reveal options as far as the fastening. You can either use concealed or sort of a surface mount rivet appearance. It acts as a rain screen. I think it's, we've used it on a couple other projects recently, and I think it turned out nice. And there's a little bit higher quality standard you can hold to it, opposed to, say, a hardy, and it broke it up. But I at the same time, I didn't dislike the other option with the masonry for that bay as well. I think the building is small enough where it could be entirely masonry and still work. But I just wanted to have a little bit of contrast with the other material.
Yeah, I sort of prefer your first one also. You know, I think, yeah, I mean, I feel like that darker color integrates well with what the storefront, how the storefront's going to read, which is, you know, glass tends to be, unless you know it's very bright inside, you know, the glass tends to be dark also. I feel like it's sort of a quieter solution. Feels like less materials than the other scheme. I would want to understand the corner condition for the scheme. And I have to say, I think the glass balconies seem to me to be more successful. The filigree of the railings, it just doesn't seem to match the scale, you know, of the building as well. You know, so I think it's a little bit of combining those two things. And I don't know what that top eyebrow, whatever you want to call it, is materially, but
Or how it's supported. That was going to be one of my questions.
or how it's
How it's-
supported.
So, well, right. So the sunshade is more than likely going to need outrigger. Well, not more than likely. It's going to need either supports coming from the top or below. In this instance, I would go from below just because of its proximity to the cornice. But I think that's a work in progress. I actually don't think the sunshade helps at all on this. I'd like to get rid of it. I don't think it adds anything. And I actually think that the base should be brick opposed to the stone. I think it reads better as an entirely brick building. I agree with you with the glass railings. My one sort of concern on that is just from a maintenance standpoint, that they be kept clean. I think they always look great on day one. And I just think about, the months of January through March where everything's brown and gets dirty. And, but that being said, they're up in the air, so we could probably keep them a little bit cleaner.
I would agree with you, Will, that I think that I was going to make the comment that it seems like the base wants to bring the brick down. I think that it kind of wants to come down and finish itself at the bottom. And maybe you still have that dark granite base in which it, hits.
Yeah.
But that I think that the brick wants to come down and show itself at the bottom. I was going to suggest, I like the Sembrit. I've used the product, but I was intrigued a little bit about the idea of perhaps introducing copper, and in this case, pre-patina copper, right? And could the Sembrit in this option be the pre-patina copper so that you kind of bring that green component and the brick component in a contemporary fashion, and that it could have kind of like that dialogue of that we see a lot in the buildings, and that instead of doing it the way that you would doing it selectively, just on, apply, that you actually just take your option one and everything that is the dark gray Sembrit would become the pre-patina. And in that case, I would say only if you can use pre-patina.
Yeah.
And not raw copper, but it would have to be pre-patina.
Yeah, I would want, yeah, and I would hesitate to, I don't think this is what you meant, but finding a Sembrit that is that color, right? You're saying, yeah, okay, yeah. We don't want mint ice cream on the side there. So yeah, I think if we did a pre-patina copper, I think that could look really nice. My one, I guess not concern, but I think from an installation standpoint, on a size of that scale, I think I would need to really refine how that's applied so that you don't get real severe oil canning just because
Go to Tufts, go see the Steve Tisch athletic facility. We use pre-patina there a lot, and you can see what the capacity of the pre-patina copper can be. So it's the Steve Tisch Fitness Center.
Yep. No, I'm familiar with that building. Yeah. So
it's possible you can do it, and I think it would look elegant. I think it would not make the building so dark, but kind of like brighten it up and be a nice welcoming piece in that intersection of the square. As you're coming in, you get to see it. It would be nice and elegant.
Yeah, my initial thought about, I kind of thought, well, this top floor, maybe it should be treated in an entirely different material, just sort of fades away into the distance. But then when I got around to the side, I think it works better as being, because my initial thought was that top floor could be that pre-patina copper as well. But then I think it's too busy, and I think it's too much, and then it reads more like a layer cake with the first floor, middle floors, top floors. So and again, I think going back to the brick at the base opposed to the stone helps with that, meaning it ground to your use your words, ground it.
I would also look at the bay on the left side above the 379 sign.
Yep.
On its right, it gets very thin, almost, the proportion of it at that point, it's very thin that I don't think it would end up being that way. From a Sembrit perspective, that's going to be a bitch to actually cut and fabricate and wrap around. And
So there, I agree, because we did that on 400 Mystic Ave, and it was just that. But I think in this instance, the thought was, because there is a window on the return side,
Saw
and
that.
so we would use that as a glass corner, and that would be a mullion that we would color match. So that's.
So it would be a mullion to color match, okay.
Yeah,
So
I
maybe
think
in that sense, it's like the pre-patina copper might end up being a better option.
Yeah, certainly more malleable.
Because color matching is a bitch as well, as we know, right?
Okay, so it sounds like I need to come back with a refine, but I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to speak for the board, but it's the consensus that the version we're looking at now is sort of in concept the preferred, and with some tweaking with materials and railings and that we could.
Yeah, I think as you sort of started out, you kind of threw out there that it might be a little bit too busy, and I would tend to agree with that. So I would say, like, as we tweak it, it's just keeping in mind that it is a 40-foot wide building. It's not that wide, and I'm seeing sort of 3 distinct and different sort of breaking up of the facade on the vertical register. I don't know that I need that many in a 40-foot wide building. Like, I think it could be simplified and still be elegant and achieve the things that you're asking for.
Okay.
So just to remind everyone, there's 4 actions that you could take this evening, or a 5th action just to simply continue the application to the next hearing. So if you were to check any boxes, if you will, if you prefer, take a vote to prefer one of the options presented, take a vote to identify any priority design guidelines, take a vote on whether the design guidelines have been met to your satisfaction, and then anything else you would like to weigh in on. So I can reiterate what's been said. It sounds like there is possibly a preference for an option that's been presented, but I would then continue the project to the next meeting.
Yes.
To do the remainder, unless anybody sees any design guidelines that are of a priority that you know of at this moment. Maybe just express that and then later choose to vote to bring them to a higher priority.
So someone needs to make a motion on the action that we'll take.
All right. So I make a motion on what you're referring to, Melissa, which is really I think that I'm saying is I prefer option 1 with the modifications that we discussed, and to see it again with those modifications. I would like to see those design modifications be brought back for approval.
So those will be 2 separate votes. The first motion, as you said, to state a preference for option 1.
Yes, I vote for. I bring that motion. I vote yes. Approve.
Okay, so you motioned that. Someone has to second that.
Second.
Andrew seconded, and so now I'll call roll call. So on the motion to prefer option 1, Frank,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes, but I think it's good to clarify what we mean by option 1. So Frank, so just so I understand what you had intended, it is essentially in the upper part of the facade, it's 2 materials. And I think
Yes.
that's part of, what I think is successful with this. I'm not 100% convinced on the copper. I think it's a harder detail and harder, I don't know where it'll go. I don't know whether it's a more expensive alternative or not. But I worry a little bit about the detailing of it. You're comfortable with it, Frank, so I would defer to you on that. But I think so we're all agreeing on the composition that there are 2 materials, not 3 materials, which I think the other 2 alternatives have. And then I think to Andrew's point, I think simplifying them a little bit, I think you know, just the way the right and the center bay are framed in either the dark material or the copper material, you know, I think wants to be a little more similar. And I don't know if I'm speaking for you, Andrew, but you know, so I think those nuances, I think maybe would go with the motion.
Yeah, I think there's definitely development. I don't need the gray register that's sort of running through them. Like just sort of a general simplification of things, I think is what we're looking for in development.
So, okay, let's try this again. Are we motioning to prefer one option? And is option one, Deborah wants to clarify that it is 2 materials, not 3. So that was the motion before us. So Frank and Andrew both voted yes. And so Deborah, you need to let me know what your vote is.
So it'd be yes with that clarification.
So then the second motion would be that the architect take the recommendations of this committee and refine the design and come back to us again. And someone needs to make that motion and second it.
A motion that the architect take the recommendations of this board, refine the design, and return to us in a future meeting.
And I second that motion.
I third it.
Andrew,
And I'll vote that way also.
Andrew motioned and Deborah seconded. And so now we have to do the roll call again. Frank?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Can I also ask for the landscape streetscape plan as well? Is that
Yes.
a separate?
Yes.
Is that another motion that the architect present more landscape details?
Just a landscape plan that includes further development of what's ever going on in the back and includes the streetscape in the front.
Okay, so say that, and before that, say I motion that.
Oh, this is like a board for dummies right now. I motion that the applicant present a landscape plan that includes further clarification detailing on the green space in the back and in the streetscape in the front, and includes an updated green score that reflects what is being proposed.
Someone needs
I
to
second that.
Okay, great. Okay, roll call. Frank?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Great. So it looks like we will be seeing you again at the next meeting.
Can't wait. Thank you. So in theory, if I get Melissa, if I get this into you before the 20th, we could be heard on the 27th.
Yes, that's our next tentative date is October 27th.
Okay. All right. Well,
Okay. Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
That completes our agenda for this evening. A motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, a roll call vote on adjourning. Frank?
Yes.
Andrew?
Oh, yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Okay, it's
Okay,
7:07, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bon appetit.
Nice seeing you, Melissa.
Bon appetit, everyone.
Good seeing you too.